Fellow members, it's the appointed time. It's already 4:45. This is the National Anthem Bill, and this is the first meeting. Well, the clerk told me that 64 members have joined the committee. Previously, the record was at 63. Now we've broken the record, 64. So I'm honored to be chairing the meeting now, and election of chairman. So I can't hear you. Please speak up. A moment. Well, please keep quiet. Mr. Martin Liao. Mr. Martin Liao, any seconder? Mr. Jeffrey Lam seconds. Mr. Martin Liao, where are you? Do you accept the nomination? Yes. So valid nomination. Any other nomination? Dr. Helena Wong. Mr. Jonathan Ho. Mr. Jonathan Ho, any seconder? Mr. Lam Chek-ting seconds. Mr. Jonathan Ho, do you accept the nomination? So I don't accept the nomination. Mr. Alvin Yang. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Any seconder? Mr. Kenneth Leung seconds. Mr. Dennis Kwok, do you accept the nomination? Yes, I do. So that's again a valid nomination. Any other nomination? I'll count up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 2 valid nominations. Mr. Tommy Zhang, I would like to ask, well, do they know how to sing the national anthem? Can they sing it so that I can decide whether how I should vote? We don't have a singing session. Well, maybe they can sing without any music accompaniment. Well, maybe that can be a part of your question, but I don't want to set the precedent that there will be some singing. And then if we come to another bill, we may have to sing another song. Well, it's very seldom that we got to the chance to discuss the national anthem. Mr. Tommy Zhang, are you asking for a question and answer session? If yes, then I will arrange for it. I don't need the Q&A session. I'm familiar with the 2 of them. I just want to know whether they know how to sing the national anthem. Okay, well, if there is nothing else, then we can proceed to the vote. Please keep quiet. Yes, what is it? Chairman, well, please keep quiet, Miss Claudia Mo. I sit at the back, and there, you don't see me raising my hand. So can that be a question and answer session? So you're asking for a question and answer session? Yes, okay. Well, as long as you ask for it, then I can make the relevant arrangement. All right. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Well, I find it strange that you don't accede to Mr. Tommy Zhang's request, but then you are acceding to Ms. Claudia Mo's request. Well, as long as it is allowed in the procedure, then that can be arranged. And the procedure allows for a Q&A session, but not singing. Well, he's asking whether they know how to sing. They don't have to sing the song, the anthem itself. They can just answer whether they know how to sing. Well, maybe in the Q&A session, then he can raise that question and ask them, say, sing a bit of the national anthem. So, Mr. Tommy Zhang, can you change your question? Well, I've asked him already. He said he doesn't want to do that. So, anyway, well, let's arrange for a very simple Q&A session. Hopefully, that won't take us much time. Well, his question is very simple: whether they know how to sing the national anthem. You can put the question to them and then ask for an answer. Well, if we have a formal Q&A session, well, we have to go by the formal rules, and we can't just I can't just allow for a casual question, casually asked like that. That isn't in line with our formal procedure. All right, let's do it this way. I suggest that a total of 20 minutes be allotted. So 20 minutes, 10 minutes for each candidate. So, Mr. Martinelli, what is it? You object to it? Well, I don't want to answer any questions. You can vote for me or not. I don't mind. Well, you can't. You can choose whether or not to answer the question. That's no problem. You don't accept it? Yes, Chairman, I accept questions put to me. I think the candidate should answer questions raised by members. Even if you ask me whether I know how to sing the national anthem, I will answer that question as well. So let me allow 5 questions. So 2 minutes for each member, including answers and questions. So 20 minutes, sorry. Well, 30 seconds for the question, and then answer 1.5 minutes. So a total of, so that can be at most 5 questions. So that's it, right? Okay. So do they have to sit in the front? No? No need. Okay, so please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. So a total of 10 members can get the chance to ask a question. So please raise your hand. So, well, the clerk advised us to press the button. Yes, what is it? In the past, when we elect the chairman, well, the only thing that is needed is for the candidate to introduce and explain himself. We should not be allotting 20 minutes for a Q&A session. That has never happened before. Well, somebody asked for that. Well, has it been done at the Bills Committee? You allot 20 minutes for the Q&A session? So, sorry, Chairman. Can we first vote on whether we should allot 20 minutes to do this? So that's the chairman makes the decision to put in that arrangement. Well, there's no way that we can say no, right? Oh, okay. Excuse me. Well, please listen to me. The clerk reminded me. Well, if the candidates are willing and the members do not object, then I can proceed with the arrangement. So any objection first? Yes. So if there is objection, then we have to make a decision first. Okay. For those who are in favor, well, let's put that to vote. Well, press the button, right? Okay. Those who are in favor of putting in a simple Q&A session, as I suggested, please. Well, if you object to it, then please, vote against it. So you have to first press the button showing that you are present. And you can also choose to abstain. So we don't have to have the bell rung for 5 minutes. All of us are here, right? Okay, have you all cast your vote? I'll count up to 3. 1, 2, 3. So voting is closed. Display of results. 55 present, 24, 33 against, nil abstention. So there is no Q&A. I'm sorry, Claudia Mo, no Q&A. Anything else? No? All right, now let's proceed to the vote. So please sit in your scheduled seat, and then I'll ask the Secretariat to distribute the ballot papers. Can our staff distribute the ballot papers? Please sit still. Well, we've got the number. Number 1 is Mr. Martin Liao. Number 2 is Mr. Dennis Kwok. So can the two nominators, Mr. Gary Chan and Mr. Alvin Young, please? I can't hear you. Please switch on the mic for Ms. Tanya Chan. Yes. Well, there is another meeting going on next door. Since we have a record high number of members here at the Bills Committee, so can you wait till the other members from the other room have arrived? I understand Dr. Fernando Zheng is in the other room chairing the meeting. Ms. Tanya Chen, you can WhatsApp him. Well, it takes time for them to walk across. I'm not asking you to stop the meeting. So what am I asking? What are you asking of me to do? Well, we are still distributing the ballot papers, but I can't say wait for any particular individual. So have you all got your ballot papers? So you've got the top as well? Okay, please cast your vote. Now I'll allow for some time for you to put the chop in the ballot paper, and then I'll count before I stop the process. Anyone who has not been given a ballot paper, so the clock, please watch out. So if anyone rushes in, please remind me that I should allow him to vote. Okay, so I'll count up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we will stop distributing the ballot papers, and then our colleagues will now collect the ballot papers.
Okay.
The clerk has told me that we have distributed 58 ballot papers, so these will now be collected. So can Mr. Gary Chan and Mr. Alvin Young get prepared? After we've collected the ballot papers, please come forth. Hang on. So any member who has the ballot paper but has not been able to put it in the box, all right, the collection of the ballot papers is stops.
我讀，你俾我睇。好啦，得1號。
Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. 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 Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. 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 we have a total of 58 votes received. Mr. Martin Liu, candidate number 1, received 35 votes. Mr. Dennis Kwok received 25 votes. I declare that Mr. Martin Liu is duly elected. Thank you very much for your support. May I ask whether we need to elect a deputy chairman? No? Oh, yes? Okay, in that case, do we have any nominations? So, Mr. Cheung Kwok Kwan. Any seconder? Mr. Luk Chung Hong second the motion. Mr. Cheung Kwok Kwan, do you accept the nomination? I do. Are there any other nominations? Ms. Claudia Mo, Mr. Dennis Kwok. Any seconder? Mr. Kenneth Chang Leung, second the nomination. Mr. Kwok, do you accept the nomination? I do. So we have 2 candidates. Are there other nominations? If not, I declare that we will now elect the deputy chairman by way of secret ballot. Our stewards will now distribute the ballot papers and the chalk to members. Let's remind colleagues that Mr. Cheung Kwok Kwan is candidate number 1, Mr. Dennis Kwok is candidate number 2.
OK 各位，由於呢個係不記名嘅投票，
Since this is voting by secret ballot, please do not display your ballot paper to other colleagues. You should, you don't need to fold the ballot paper, but they're still being distributed. May I ask whether there are any colleagues who have not yet received the ballot paper? If you've not yet received the ballot paper, please raise your hand. You may now fill in the ballot form. If you've already done that, I now declare that the voting is now closed and the stewards will not distribute any more ballot forms. The stewards will now start collecting the ballot forms. The clerk has informed me that we have distributed 58 ballot forms.
OK 你唱。 請問各位投票嘅委員
Have all members put your ballot forms into the ballot box? So we'll now start counting the votes. Will the two colleagues who nominated the candidates please come forward to be the scrutineers?
《請秘書開始點票。
The clerk will now start counting the votes.
LegCo
Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1.
Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. 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 Okay. Thank you. For the 2 members who scrutinized the counting, please return to your seats. So the number of ballot papers counted are the same as those distributed. Mr. Horace Zhang got 35 votes, Mr. Dennis Kwok 23. So I declare Mr. Horace Zhang elected as the Deputy Chairman. All the ballot papers will be immediately destroyed under the supervision of the clerk. Mr. Horace Zhang, congratulations. So the election has now come to a close. So can we now invite the administration team to join us? The next item, meeting with the administration, and we'll discuss the bill with the administration. Members, please refer to LegCo brief, file reference CMAB E4/1/1, and also the Legal Service Division report on the bill, and LC paper number LS42/1819. And there is also a background brief. So from the background brief, you get to understand the background to the bill. So first of all, can I invite the Secretary for CMA, Mr. Patrick Nip, to brief us on the bill before I open the floor to questions by members. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. I'd like to thank members for your concern on the National Anthem bill. Together with the Bureau colleagues and the DOJ, we are here to attend the first meeting of the Bills Committee of the National Anthem bill. We would like to work together with members to take forward the local legislative work on the national anthem law. Now, on the 4th of November 2017, the Standing Committee of the 12th National People's Congress adopted the decision to add the national anthem law to Annex 3 to the Basic Law. According to Article 18 of the Basic Law, the national listed Annex 3 to the Basic Law shall be applied locally by way of promulgation or legislation by the SARL. It is thus the responsibility of the government to implement the national anthem law locally. Having regard to the common law system practiced in Hong Kong and the actual circumstances in Hong Kong, we propose to implement the national anthem law in Hong Kong as out by local legislation to which is consistent with one country, two systems principle. We have heard people's views through various channels. In March last year, we consulted the CMA panel and also attended 2 public hearings held in April and May to hear views from the public and the deputations. These two public hearings lasted 16 hours. We have met with political parties, professional bodies, academics, hoping to take heed of the views of the various sides. After detailed deliberations, we had the first and second reading of the Council of the bill. Let me say something first about the legislative principle. It's very clear. It's to fully reflect the purpose and intent of the national anthem law, which is to preserve the dignity of the national anthem and promote respect for the national anthem, and to give due regard to the common law system in Hong Kong and the actual circumstances in Hong Kong. There are altogether 16 provisions in the national anthem law. After taking into actual considerations of the Hong Kong local situation, apart from provision 9, 14, and 16, the other 13 provisions have been incorporated in the bill. Clause 1, 3, and 5 have been incorporated into the preamble, which sets out the principle and the background to the bill. And then the crux of the bill is two-pronged. One is to state that the national anthem is a symbol and sign of the People's Republic of China, and to lead people to respect the national anthem by directional provisions, and to introduce penalties for people who publicly and intentionally insult the national anthem or misuse the national anthem. Let me now go into the details of the bill. Part 2 is about playing and singing of the national anthem, setting out the standards, etiquette, and occasions of the playing and singing of the national anthem. These are directional provisions with no penalty. And Clause 4 provides for the etiquette to be followed by persons who take part or attend an occasion when the national anthem is played and sung, and this can allay the public's worry as to whether people should be standing solemnly when the national anthem is being played on TV. And also in Schedule 3, we set out the occasions where the national anthem should be played and sung, and these include official functions of the SAR government and also the oath-taking ceremonies of members of the executive, legislature, and judiciary, and flag-raising ceremony, and major sports events, and legal year opening ceremony. The third part is protection of the national anthem, prohibiting the misuse of the national anthem, lyrics, and score, and also acts which insult the national anthem publicly, intentionally, and offences and penalties are set. And national anthem should not be used in trademark or commercial advertisements, and there will be a penalty of a fine of level 5, which is $50,000. And also, national anthem is prohibited to be used as a background music, and it carries a penalty of a fine at level 2, which is $2,000. And there is another penalty saying that there will be a level 5 penalty and a 3 years imprisonment. And based on the evidence collected, the law enforcement agencies will look at the individual cases. Ultimately, the cases will be decided by the court in accordance with the established criminal principles. As I said in moving the second reading debate, our principle is very clear. We want to prohibit insulting the national anthem intentionally and publicly. And when we decide on cases, these will be the principles to go by. And these are also the common law principles. So if members of the public don't intend to insult the national anthem, they should not worry, and they should not be caught inadvertently by the law. And the bill sets out provisions to protect reasonable publication of insulting behavior. For example, fair reporting of the media, and also using that for teaching purpose. And that has to do with Clause 5, subsection 5. These will not carry criminal liabilities. To Clause 7, bracket 7, provides for an extension of the prosecuting time period to 1 year after the day on which the offence is discovered by or comes to the notice of the Commissioner of Police, or 2 years after the date on which the offence is committed, which is the earlier. And a prosecution time bar has been set for many different other offences, so this is not unique to this bill. And the fourth part is about promotion of national anthem, and Clause 9 asks the Secretary for Education to give directions for the inclusion of the national anthem in primary school, secondary and secondary education. And also Clause 10 asks the sound broadcasting and domestic television program services licensees to broadcast national anthem in the APIs, and that goes to reflect the intent of the national anthem law and also have regard to Hong Kong's actual circumstances in Hong Kong. Part 5 and Part 6 of the bill has to do with supplementary provisions and consequential amendments. All in all, the overriding spirit of the bill is respect. And I think that should be understandable by the public, and it's not easy to achieve for acts which intentionally and publicly insult the national anthem. Penalty should be set so that such acts will be deterred. We believe that most members of the public will respect the national anthem, and the bill will not have major impact on Hong Kong's people's daily lives. I hope that members can finish the scrutiny of the bill as soon as possible so that we can discharge our duty to implement the national anthem law, and we would work and cooperate with the Bills Committee in scrutinizing the bill. Thank you, Secretary. As pointed out by the Secretary, and as we all know, the national anthem law has been listed in Annex 3 of the Basic Law. And according to the Basic Law, Hong Kong has the duty, the legal duty, to apply it locally by way of promulgation or legislation. And the government has now opted to implement it by way of local legislation. So there is no question of whether we should enact the law. There is indeed a legal basis for doing that. So before we go into the clause-by-clause scrutiny of the bill, we will have a general discussion on policy issues here. So members can ask a question wherever possible. We will allow members to ask a question by pressing a button. So if members who would like to ask a question, please press a button, and then we will go by the sequence as shown on the computer screen. All right, the first one is Mr. Roy. Well, how many minutes? Well, I've got only 3 names in front of me. The first one is Mr. Roy Kwong, Mr. Au Nak Hin, Elizabeth Quat, Yip Kin Yun, Claudia Mo, Cheng Chong Tai, Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Elvin Young, Mr. Hui Chi Fong, Mr. Dennis Kwok, Mr. Holden Chow, and Mr. Eddie Chu.
So 12 members so far. Shall we say 4 minutes per member, questions and answers included. First of all, the public is very concerned whether they would, breach the law inadvertently. Are we only talking about the 9 occasions as described in Annex 3? And the Senior Council can amend Annex 3. So under what circumstances will Annex 3 be amended? What will be the occasions when the national anthem will be played? And then, other than the 9 occasions, the number of such occasions could be increased, and this is what the public is concerned about. Thank you, Mr. Kwong. First of all, in Annex 3, the occasions listed are those on which the national anthem would need to be played. In the bill, we've also provided for occasions which are not suitable for the playing of the national anthem. For other occasions, the organizer can determine whether or not the national anthem will be played. Secondly, whoever makes that decision, on occasions when the national anthems are played, those people in attendance, if they should be engaged in any act which is insulting to the national anthem, they will be liable. If they do not deliberately engage in any act which is insulting to the national anthem, they will not be criminally liable. For those attending the occasions when the national anthem is played, then they should adopt the proper etiquette. So these are guidelines, and there's no question of whether or not one will be asked whether he is respectful or not. When one attends such occasions, if you don't have the intention to deliberately insult the national anthem, then you do not engage in such behavior, then you will not be caught and you will not be penalized. So long as you naturally show that you are respecting the national anthem. As I said, the bill will have no impact on the daily life of the people, because most people will not deliberately want to publicly and openly insult the national law. So that's the situation. So Annex 3 will prescribe the occasions on which the anthem will be played. So if necessary, then we can, by way of subsidiary legislation, increase the number of such occasions. We've listed 3 occasions here after making reference of Article 4 of the National Anthem Law, where after we've compared that with to those in Hong Kong, we've added these occasions. So most of these occasions are actually official functions of the SAR government, like the hoisting of the national flag on July 1st and National Day, and important sports events organized by the SAR government, and also the swearing in of the officials in the legislature, the judiciary, and so on. And if need be, we can extend the number of these occasions by way of subsidiary legislation. And if there were any further occasions to be added, they would be formal and solemn occasions where it is appropriate to play the national anthem and to show our respect for the national anthem. Secretary, the public is concerned about the inadvertently, breaching the law. I ask, what considerations will you consider to increase or reduce the number of such occasions? And for the occasions where the national anthem is suitable to be played, it could be a square, a public square. And the people present may be worried whether or not the response is solemn or not. So at least you should tell us what are the criteria under which you will amend the occasions as prescribed in Schedule 3. The occasions in Schedule 3 and whether these occasions would be increased, and whether the public and the fact that whether the public is concerned as to whether or not they will inadvertently break the law are 2 separate issues. On these occasions where the national anthem is played, so long as they don't engage in activities which are deliberately insulting the national anthem, they would not be liable. Mr. Au. According to Annex 3, the Standing Committee of MPCSC and after consulting the SAR government may add or cut down the occasions as provided for in Schedule 3. When the Standing Commission of the MPCSC was promulgated and it was also proposed that the national anthem law should be incorporated in Annex to the basic law, and that we should go for local legislation. So this is in accordance with Article 13 of the basic law. But in between, I have not seen the Basic Law Committee and the SAR government expressing any opinion in regard to the Standing Committee of the MPCSC. I'd like to know whether you've consulted the views of those two parties. Could the Secretary provide for us what are the views submitted by the Basic Law Committee and the ASR government to the Standing Commission of the MPCSC? Thank you, Mr. Au, for your questions. On the 4th of November 2017, the Standing Committee of the MPCSC decided to incorporate the national anthem law into Annex 3 of the Basic Law. I can confirm that the Standing Commission of the MPCSC did follow the Basic Law and went through the proper procedure in coming to this decision. As for the correspondence from Malian authorities, we normally would not disclose them. So you cannot tell us what views or inputs the Basic Law Committee or the SA government has submitted to the Standing Commission. I can confirm that the Standing Commission of the MPCSC had, in accordance with the requirements of the Basic Law, completed the procedure in incorporating the national anthem law into Annex 3 of the Basic Law. I think there might be an issue here, Secretary. When I look at the remark made by Mr. Martin Lee, the then LegCo member, he did ask a verbal question. Mr. Martin Lee asked the government regarding the MPCSC's consulting the views of the government, and the government had undertaken that any national law that should be incorporated into Annex 3 which have an impact on Hong Kong, then such matters will be referred to the relevant panel in LegCo for discussion. Although LegCo have had a discussion on this, but if you have to submit a formal view to the Standing Commission, shouldn't you, during those 2 months, consult the views of LegCo before you will submit a report? Otherwise, if you already decided on the content of Annex 3, then any discussion in LegCo will not be able to change that, and you will not be able to reflect the views of the public in Hong Kong. So procedurally, do you think there is a problem? Have you actually violated the promise which the SA government has given in response to the question raised by Mr. Martin Lee? Now, first of all, the Standing Commission of the MPCSC, and also whether the Basic Law Committee have been consulted. Well, so I think the two would act in according to the procedure and mechanism. Regarding the consultation with the SA government, in fact, that has been done, and the SA government had also agreed that the national anthem law should be incorporated into Annex 3. Your time is up. Dr. Elizabeth Kwok. The DAB absolutely support the early, enactment of the national anthem law. It is a symbol of our respect of our country and safeguarding the dignity of the national anthem. And this is the duty of every citizen. The provisions in the bill is very clear. So long as you don't deliberately insult the national anthem, then you would not inadvertently be breaking a law. Some people are saying that you can easily break the law inadvertently. So I think we should try to explain that clearly to the public. Say when people are not attending the function, they're just passerby when the national anthem is being played. How should they behave? Should they stand, solemnly, or if they're not in attendance of the function concerned, if they just pass it by, they shouldn't be affected. Well, there are two answers to your questions, Dr. Kwok. First of all, if a member of public, if a citizen were just passing by or if you're watching the television in a restaurant and at the time when the national anthem is played, should they stop doing everything and stand, in respect of that? Otherwise, they will be breaching the law. In Article 4, we spell out clearly that this is only, a directional provision. It also said that only those people who participate in attendance the occasion should stand in silence and should not engage in any behavior that is disrespectful. So if you're attending or participating in an occasion where the national anthem is being played, then you should observe the proper etiquette of respect and show your. So that's the first point. That is, if you're not attending such functions or events, say if you're watching the national anthem being played while you're in a restaurant, then you don't have to immediately stand up to show your respect. Secondly, if I'm just a passerby on an occasion when I'm just passing by the venue where the national anthem is being played, so whether or not there will be any penalty will depend on whether that person had deliberately engaged in any act that is insulting to the national anthem. So the question is whether or not the person is doing this publicly and whether he has the intent, and thirdly whether he has engaged in any tangible behavior doing that. So these are the factors that we would need to take into consideration. And where there are such cases, we need sufficient evidence before the law enforcement authorities can proceed to prosecution. And if there should be any prosecution, then we should go through the procedure in court according to the common law, and we would need to actually satisfy the threshold before a penalty could be imposed. Most importantly, if you are not publicly or deliberately insult the national law anthem and you don't have that intent, then you will not be caught. What about foreign visitors like tourists attending, occasions when the national anthem is being played? Should they also need to abide by these provisions? For any person attending an occasion when the national anthem is being played, whatever the national anthem that may be, I think all the attendants should actually, observe the proper etiquette and show the respect. I'm sure, most of them would do that. Mr. Yip Kin Yun, regarding the national anthem bill, I would like to first of all state my position. And I'd like to first of all, I go by two principles. First of all, I agree that we should respect the national anthem, while at the same time we must protect human rights and freedom. And I believe these two principles are complementary to each other, and it is important in the realization of one country system principle. So the bill already highlighted the point that the national anthem should be respected. In the scrutiny of the bill, I think we need to place the focus on whether the details of the provision can effectively protect our human rights and freedom. As a representative from the educational sector, I'm concerned about the educators who might be unduly affected in the course of performing their teaching duties. In the bill, I'd like to ask whether we can ensure that human rights and freedom are being protected. I think that would be the important considerations we make in deciding whether or not we support the bill. And if necessary, we will be moving relevant amendments to the bill. In the course of scrutinizing this bill, I would also consider consulting the views of my constituents in the education sector.
So this is my basic stance. Now, I mentioned that we should be taking a stringent look at the details of the bill. We should look at each clause in each part to make sure that Hong Kong's freedom and human rights are duly safeguarded. So one point that I would like to raise this time is about the definition of insult. I believe that everybody is concerned about this. In the bill, in Part 3, well, the term insult has appeared many times. And towards the end, in Clause 8, it means that insult in relation to the national anthem means to undermine the dignity of the national anthem as a symbol and sign of the PRC. And it attempts to give a definition of insult. And Secretary, can you cite some examples to illustrate what is considered as insulting behavior and what is not considered as insult? Can you cite some examples to make the public understand more what do you mean by insult, so that the concept is not too abstract or subjective and that people will be caught inadvertently by the law easily? Thank you, Mr. Yip, for your question. Mr. Yip states his stance, and that he said that the national anthem should be respected, and in terms of protecting freedom and human rights, that was also provided in the Hong Kong laws and the Basic Law. Now, in drafting the national anthem bill, we mainly considered that there should only be reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech and of expression. And we have taken reference from a CFA case in 1999 when we worked on that part. So in response to your question on the definition of insult, there is a definition in the bill on insult. In many Hong Kong laws, the term insult or similar terms have been used also. And in these other laws, there is no statutory definition of insult and similar terms. So normally, when there is no definition for a certain term in the law, then the term will be interpreted as it is to be understood generally. So that is a common law principle. But in the course of drafting the National Anthem Bill, we have particularly considered the fact that insult may be related to restriction on freedom of speech, of expression. So we have taken reference from a CFA case in 1999, which is on a national flag. So we have added in this definition, which is to say, in relation to the national anthem, insult means to undermine the dignity of the national anthem as a symbol and sign of the PRC. So we know clearly what we mean by insult here. And then we have the common law system being practiced in Hong Kong. And I think it's appropriate for us to give a definition to insult here. Next one, Ms. Claudia Mo. I have just read through the outline development plan for the Greater Bay Area. It emphasized Hong Kong's international status, and it says that Beijing upholds diversified culture. Hong Kong's characteristics is we are an international and diversified city. And I have received many inquiries on National Anthem Bill for expatriates and ethnic minorities living in Hong Kong. Basically, they are permanent residents of Hong Kong, but at the same time, they may be holding, say, U.S., British, Canadian, Nepalese passports. But in the National Anthem Bill, it is stated clearly that we should be promoting patriotism. And they are quite shocked because this is a local bill. It should apply to Hong Kong people. But then they are of a different nationality, as pointed out by yourself. From a foreign visitor, will respect the country's national anthem, the national anthem of the country they're visiting. But this bill will apply to these other people that I mentioned who are permanent residents of Hong Kong. Secretary, thank you, Ms. Mo, for your question. Hong Kong is an international city. We have a diversified culture, and we are accommodating. And in this city, whether you are Chinese citizen or overseas citizen or tourist, and no matter what national anthem we are playing, whenever a national anthem is played, it's just common sense that we should respect the national anthem being played. Well, I have to bosh it. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about the impact of the national anthem bill on the non-Chinese Hong Kong people, but you emphasize that you should promote patriotism. Is it necessary? That's in the preamble, right? So in the preamble, there are 3 points. In point number 3, we talked about promoting patriotism. And it also says that the ordinance is to be enacted to preserve the dignity of the national anthem, regulate the playing and singing, the broadcast, and the use of the national anthem to enhance citizen awareness of the PRC. So we're talking about several objectives here. Promoting patriotism is not the single objective of the bill. So overall speaking, the national anthem is the symbol and sign of the nation, and all individuals and organizations should respect the national anthem. We should preserve the dignity of the national anthem, regulate the playing and singing, and the use, and enhance citizen awareness, and promote patriotism. Well, I understand that. I will be asking more detailed questions on the preamble later on. I'm not totally against your remarks, but can you not respect an expatriate who is also a Hong Kong permanent resident? Can you stand in their shoes, try to empathize with their feelings? You talk about categorically promoting patriotism, but then they may be showing patriotism towards Canada or Nepal, their own nation. So they find this phrase quite out of character in a way with what they think they should do. So when in part 3 of the preamble, there is a clear direction set out. We talk about enhancing citizen awareness of the nation. Under the PRC's national law, Hong Kong people born in Hong Kong and they are of Chinese nationality, then they are the Chinese citizens. So when people are born in Hong Kong, they are of Chinese nationality. In Basic Law Articles 4467, well, the term Chinese citizen is also used. So can I ask also a quick question? So does it mean that point number 3 doesn't apply to non-Chinese people? Ms. Cotimo, I believe that you have ample opportunities to follow up on your questions. So we'll go by the queue here. Dr. Helen Chung Tai. So please, Secretary, don't obscure the facts. Whether we show respect to the national anthem and whether Hong Kong people are worried about the legislation, because we're talking about a law which carries criminal liability. These are 2 separate issues. Of course, a citizen will respect its national anthem, national flag, and national emblem. That's common sense. But then the national anthem bill carries criminal liability. And this is why we think this is a piece of a draconian law, and it spreads white terror. So let's get that clear in our concepts. Please don't obscure the facts. So it doesn't mean that when we are opposing the bill, then we are not respecting the national anthem, because this is a law which carries criminal liability. That is where our worries lie. I'm not going to ask questions on the detailed provisions. We are asking questions on general policies. But I believe that the administration must clarify on one thing. Now, compared to national anthem, emblem and national flag law, well, there is one big difference here. There is preamble here in this bill, but not for the other two pieces of laws. The overall understanding of the this other law, it's very concrete. I think you should be very specific on the concept of insult, on the concept of desecration and so on. I am very clear about the concept because I lost a suitcase related to that. I hope that the government can compare to the NFNEO. We have a preamble here in this bill, but not in the FNEO. And there are 3 points in point number 3. Includes several elements enhancing citizen awareness of the nation and promoting patriotism. And these are two separate issues. We are talking about preserving, regulating the playing and singing and the use of the national anthem. This is regulation on behavior and it can be observed. But then for the latter two elements, these are not clear. So can the administration respond to my two questions? How come that we have a preamble here in this bill and not in the NFNEO, National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance? Yes, I think your question has been clear. Give them the chance to answer. Dr. Chang, you have two questions. The first one is that, well, if you don't insult the national anthem publicly intentionally, then you will not be criminally liable. Well, criminal liability is involved only when there is an act of intentionally and publicly insulting the national anthem. And the other provisions are just directional provisions. Now, let me explain more the preamble. The preamble seeks to enable better understanding of the background of the bill and the intent of the bill, and that's why we add in the preamble here. There is preamble in many other laws as well, and there are 3 points in the preamble, and that is spread in 3 different articles in the national anthem law. So we have taken on board the local circumstances, and we think that these matters should be set out in the preamble and not actually in the provisions or the clauses. That is a more appropriate approach. Dr. Helena Wong, I have several questions. First, the Secretary for Education should give directions to all primary and secondary schools, but it doesn't say anything specifically about the content of such direction. So can the Secretary for Education be invited to explain more? And then for Schedule 3, it sets out the occasions for playing and singing the national anthem. I have a question on 2 particular occasions. One is the major sporting event held by the government, and the other is the oath-taking ceremony for LegCo members. First, on major sporting event. Earlier, we asked why the government that the prosecution time bar has to be extended to 2 years. They said that maybe the occasion will involve many people and it will take a long time to investigate into the matter. So members of the public have been saying that if I attend future major sporting events held by the government, doesn't mean that there will be video cams installed capturing images of people behaving during the playing of the national anthem, so that the government can conduct investigation and initiate prosecution afterwards. And say if they put on a face mask or does it mean that they would be barred from entering the venue? Or when the national anthem is played, does it mean that they have to take off their face mask? So people are concerned. And those who are going into the race course, what should they do? Will such video cameras be installed?
To monitor the behavior of the citizens. And secondly, on the question of publication, let's say someone publish something on the internet. Will the government employ some internet policemen to identify those people who are involved in acts which are insulting to the national anthem? Will there be such online police officers? For law enforcement to be taken in a football stadium or in the race course or on the internet, which department will be responsible for the enforcement, and will you be hiring extra staff to do that? Finally, regarding the taking of oath by LegCo members, I think this will be added before members take the oath. So is the playing of the national anthem part of the oath-taking ceremony of the council? And if the member were not present, would it be construed as that he is not respectful of the national anthem and therefore be in breach of the national anthem ordinance, or that the oath that he has taken will be considered invalid? Secretary, I'll be very brief. Regarding the Education Bureau, the Secretary of Education will issue guidelines or directions. Such a mechanism will already exist under the current system. So the Secretary will follow the existing mechanism, and I think that would be compatible with the intention of the national anthem law. Regarding sports events, in Schedule 3, we are referring to the occasions where the national anthem will need to be played, including major sports events held by the government. If they're not, held by the SAR government, then we will leave it to the organizer to determine whether or not the national anthem will be played during the event. Whoever is the host of that event, if the national anthem were played, and if somebody openly and deliberately engaged in an act that is insulting the national anthem, then it's possible that he might be in breach, and then the law enforcement authorities will follow the established procedure to take necessary action. So in other words, if the event was staged by the jockey club, it will be the responsibility of the jockey club. I think regarding the specifics, operations, you asked many specific questions. Of course, it would be for the organizers to be responsible. But if there is any illegal act, it will be the duty of the police. Will the police deploy officers to these horse racing events? Could we ask him to give us a written reply? We can ask further questions. You can press the button again. Mr. Alvin Yeo, Chairman. Matter principle. Of course, you do not have respect by way of legislation if you want people to sincerely respect the national anthem. If the SAR government has done a good job, I don't think anybody would be disrespectful of the national anthem. I hope the Bureau and the government will know this. Regarding insult, what the public is most concerned about is the definition of insult. The Secretary, I think reference was made to the national flag and anthem law ordinance. The national anthem and flag are tangible, but the national anthem is different. I mean, it only exists in the atmosphere. If you want to protect something which only exists in the atmosphere, that would really be a major cause of concern for foreign people. Specifically, the Secretary, in answering questions by the members, he has not clearly explained this. When you try to compare the national law, anthem law with the national flag and emblem ordinance. The big difference lies in the preamble. The Secretary had not answered the question clearly raised by Dr. Chang. Why is it that we don't have a preamble in the national flag and emblem ordinance, but we do have a preamble here? So here, the preamble includes, for example, the requirement that we should promote patriotism and so on. Thank you, Mr. Young. First of all, regarding, you said that we cannot rely on legislation alone to ensure respect. But other than the legislation, of course, I think we can also have to do, work something in terms of education and so on. But if anyone should deliberately insult the national anthem, if someone engages in such an act, and if we do not have any punishment for that, we wouldn't have the deterrence. And such behavior, I believe, would be regarded as unacceptable by society at large. Regarding respect, I think that in the bill itself, this is only a directional provision. It doesn't stipulate how you should behave, for example, how you should stand solemnly. We do not prescribe that. We are only talking about the intent and the specific act of the person concerned. Regarding the definition of insult, is not vague. In many of our existing ordinances, the term insult is frequently used. Terminologies like insult, insulting, there is no definition according to the common law system. I think one would need to come up with an interpretation based on the context of the provision itself, and I'm sure the court has the experience. But in this bill, we've added a definition. We hope that clearly spell out that the term insulting in the national anthem law would mean, damaging the dignity of the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. So this will provide, clear basis for the court. I'm sure that our legal system and our courts would have the experience. And thirdly, regarding the preamble, I think the major principle of local legislation is that we should, fully reflect the legislative intent of the national anthem law. We have to ensure how we can reflect that by way of local legislation. So for the provisions in the national anthem law, we will take into consideration the local considerations, and we hope to, by way of the preamble, clearly explain the intent of the national anthem law. And the provisions of the bill already provide for that. I hope the Secretary will consider why we need to enact the national anthem legislation. I think people have the freedom to express their dissatisfaction with the mainland government and their anger. We were able to do that in the past, but after the passage of this bill, of course, you will not be allowed to boo, and even if they fail to stand, in respect, then they could be in prison for 3 years. And I think that is, restraining our basic freedom and hurting our freedom of speech and expression. So it's not reasonable. In other countries which have national anthem law, they may not have sanctions. Why is it that you have to resort to sanctions and punishment to force people to respect their country? Will this really achieve the purpose? If people are worried of the penalty and sing the national anthem, but they may only do it only out of fear rather than respect. So I hope you will really reconsider whether there's a need to enact this piece of legislation. The government told us that the national, as referred to the preamble, refers to the national of the People's Republic of China. In that case, I think you should spell it out clearly so that expatriates in Hong Kong will not be forced to sing the national anthem. So I think you may need to, amend the interpretation. Thank you, Mr. Hui. First of all, regarding the need to enact the national anthem ordinance, first of all, the national anthem law is a national law incorporated into Annex 3 of the Basic Law, and therefore we have to also implement that, by way of local legislation. The state government has enacted the national law. Annex 3 is included in Annex 3, and therefore we are now, after taking the local, circumstances, and our legal system will proceed to local legislation. In other countries, the other countries may also have their own national law, which may also contain sanctions, including fines and imprisonment. In other countries, they may not have national anthem laws. In others, they have national anthem laws, but they do not provide for penalties. So the three scenarios exist in other countries. In different countries, they have the respective, the circumstances may differ. So at the moment, how can we do a good job by way of local legislation so that we can, give due regard to the local circumstances and the legal system here? I think the spirit of the bill is directional, so we hope that the guidelines could lead to help the public respect the national anthem. But if people deliberately insult the public law, then there should be a deterrence, and that's why we have the sanctions. For these provisions, if there should be any criminal liability, you need to satisfy the threshold, and you need evidence. We need to go through prosecution and the courts before a penalty is imposed. So it's not like Mr. Hui said that if you fail to stand up, then you would already be in breach. That's not the case. And thirdly, different people may have different views about our country, but one thing is clear. While you have the freedom to express your opinion and views, there is no restriction on that. The National Anthem Bill will reasonably restrict the way you express your opinion. You cannot express an opinion by insulting the dignity of the national anthem. Dennis Kwok. Chairman, I note that the bill requires the judiciary to prescribe that when the judges take the oath, they must also, the national anthem should be played. I'd like to ask whether or not you consulted the judiciary when you drafted the bill. Thank you. Mr. Kwok. In the bill, we say in Schedule 3, we've included the taking of oath by the judicial officers. I think we're making reference of Article 4 of the National Anthem Law. I asked that you consult the judiciary. Let me give you the background first. I can read that myself. Regarding the judiciary and the taking of oath by judicial officers and the occasion require the playing of the national anthem, we have consulted the judiciary. And when did you do that? Before we submitted the bill to this council, we had consulted the judiciary. Why didn't you consult the legislature at the same time? Regarding the legislature, well, for the judiciary, the legislature also has its own, specific operations. Why didn't you consult the legislature? Well, in the process, we did raise this with the president of LegCo. That was before we submit this bill to LegCo. Did you formally consult the president of LegCo, or did you just consult him in passing? I am a member of the LegCo Commission. I can say that we have never been consulted by the administration regarding the need to play the national anthem when we take our oath. Why did you consult the judiciary and not the legislature? Are you not taking us seriously, Secretary? Chairman. When we consider this, as we drafted the bill, we've made reference of the national law. Didn't you ask that I asked you why you didn't consult the Legislative Council? You've been here many times. You've never mentioned that when LegCo members take the oath, you have to play the national anthem. You consulted the judiciary. Why didn't you consult us?
諮詢邊一位啊？
Well, whom in the judiciary did you consult? I'm not asking a question about the judiciary. Why didn't you consult the Legislative Council? Chairman? We just added into the bill. Are you deliberately covering this up? Since you have consulted the judiciary, why didn't you consult the Legislative Council? We have communicated with the president of the LegCo. When? When we submitted the bill. Did you do it via writing? Yes or no? I asked, did you do that in writing? In writing? I've asked this question for a third time. Did you consult the president of LegCo in writing? No, we didn't do it in writing. So you consulted him orally. What did he say back then? What did the president say? Well, the president noted this. Did he say no problem or what? Because we had to ask the president, why didn't he notify the LegCo Commission saying that the government consulted us? The LegCo Commission had to discuss it formally. It's just like the archive law. The government formally consulted the LegCo Commission. So why did you just verbally talk to the president of LegCo? Do you have to check into your record before answering that question? Yes, next one, Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. I think the Secretary could check into his records before giving us a reply. I hope that there will be a consistent approach, and that is we should add in the playing of the national anthem in the oath-taking ceremony for members of the executive, legislature, and judiciary. So we should try to realize one country, two systems principle and highlighting the one country feature. It's not right that the national anthem is played only in the oath-taking ceremony of, say, the LegCo or just the chief executive or the judiciary. So there should be a consistency among the three kinds of bodies in playing the national anthem. So I hope the Secretary can check into his record as to the consultation process. So the principle is that the LegCo, the EXCO, and also the judiciary should also do it. And members also raised the worry that if you don't stand solemnly when the national anthem is played, and you will be taken to prosecution, you will be prosecuted. So there should not be any scaremongering because the Secretary has explained very clearly. The national anthem bill seeks to forbid people publicly and intentionally insulting the national anthem. As simple as that. For those educated, well, it's not just about your own national anthem. If you visit another place, it will not be an engaging acts insulting these countries' national anthem. Now, Mr. Ted Hui talked about international schools. And he seemed to be saying that it's wrong to play national anthem in the international school in Hong Kong. Well, these people may not be local people, but they've come to live in Hong Kong. And all we are asking is that they should not be insulting the national anthem. Well, this bill is not something to be feared. I have a question here. A number of occasions are set out on which the national anthem must be played. And the bill also says that later the chief executive may, by way of a gazette, can provide for certain further occasions in which the national anthem should not be played. So that will not be tackled now, right? It will only be dealt with later on. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chow. We have set out occasions on which national anthem must be played, and we also set out occasions on which national anthem must not be played. And we do have a mechanism whereby we can add in such occasions. We will do it by way of subsidiary legislation. And for now, we don't have any particular scenarios in mind. So all the occasions that we have in mind have been set out in Schedule 3. And we have also listed out the occasions whereby national anthem should not be played in accordance with taking reference from the national anthem law. Mr. Holden Chow has been very quick in his response. He's asking the secretary to check into his records before coming back to us. There's no need to do that. Is it you yourself who consulted Mr. Andrew Leung, the president of the LegCo, on the national anthem bill here? We have considered the occasions on which the national anthem must be played as set out in the national anthem law. Well, is it you yourself who communicated with the president of the LegCo? Well, you should not be talking directly to the secretary. Well, please give some time to the secretary to answer. My question has been clear. Well, he's trying to answer your question. So are you still interested in asking a question? Is it he himself who talked to the LegCo president? Well, he's just maybe starting with the background before answering your question. Secretary, please answer him directly. Well, just to answer the question directly. Don't give us a background. I can confirm that in considering the arrangement for the oath-taking ceremony for the chief executive, the judiciary, and the LegCo, and we have added in the LegCo, and without formally consulting the LegCo. I have informally communicated with members of the LegCo from different political parties. I have mentioned this also to the LegCo president. I can confirm that I have not formally consulted the LegCo about adding the occasion, the oath-taking ceremony of LegCo, whereby the national anthem must be played. Chairman, I wonder whether I'm considered a LegCo member. I'm not aware that LegCo members of political parties have been consulted. So, Secretary, you must tell the reporters clearly later on what you mean by different political parties. Do you mean the FTU, DAB, and LP? Now, you said that you have informally consulted the LegCo. But then for the judiciary, was there a formal consultation? I confirmed that the consultation with the judiciary was a formal one. Mr. Eddie Ju referred to the informal consultation. What we did was that we talked to the LegCo members from different political parties. We updated them on the latest progress in the drafting of the bill. But we failed to meet with some of the members. Chairman, I'm not trying to argue with him. I have participated in some briefing sessions, but it was never mentioned that the national anthem must be played at the oath-taking ceremony at the LegCo. Let me supplement. We have added in the oath-taking ceremony of the LegCo as an occasion on which national anthem must be played. We have not formally consulted the LegCo, but now we're scrutinizing the bill, so there will be ample time for us to discuss this particular point. Secretary, you haven't answered Mr. Dennis Kwok's question. I hope that you can give us a written reply. And that is, how did you consult the three powers? That is executive, legislature, and judiciary. How did you consult the executive arm, and how did you consult the judiciary, and how did you consult the LegCo members? So can you give us a written reply on this? Thank you. Next one, Mr. Raymond Chan. Two members are in the first round. I believe that I hope that after we are finished with these two members, I'll adjourn the meeting, and then we will continue with the questioning in the next meeting. Mr. Raymond Chan and Ms. Starry Lee. Mr. Raymond Chan. This national anthem bill stems from the PRC's national anthem law. And we are providing for some penalties because the national anthem law also provides for penalty. So we should not just have directional provisions, and we must also have penalties. That is my understanding. At the public hearing, I asked the Secretary this question, and this time I am raising the same question. The national anthem law was implemented on the 1st of October 2017. It's been 1 year on. Secretary, do you have any information on the law enforcement situation on the mainland? How many people have been arrested? How many prosecutions have been taken out? What is the penalty meted out? Do you have any information on the law enforcement on the mainland? Because our national anthem bill is based on the national anthem law. I believe that the administration should also be concerned about this, and we should also be given the information. Do you have such information, Secretary? We have tried to understand the situation too from the information received. Now, after the law was enacted, the mainland public security authorities have meted out penalties to 2 persons who have broken the law on the internet. These the penalty is the administrative detention. I hope that you can give us a paper, because it's been a short while since the national anthem law was implemented, and there are not many case laws. And you said that the courts in Hong Kong can make a ruling based on case laws, but I wonder whether there are enough case laws. Now, in the public hearing, some members of the public said that you were enacting legislation to compel people to love their country, and that can't be done. Well, the conclusion that I drew at that time was that the national anthem law doesn't seek to compel you to love the country, but rather is to ask you to protect the national anthem, and that you should not insult the national anthem, you should not alter the lyrics and score and so on. Is this still the objective? Because by the way the provisions are set or laid out, if you look at preamble number 3, the last sentence is to enhance citizen awareness of the People's Republic of China and to promote patriotism. And these go beyond protecting the national anthem.
The Secretary is saying that there's no penalty for it. These are only directions. If I were a teacher, if I were to teach my student, can I tell them that you only ask not to actually, insult or do something, that is not respectful of the national. But is the preamble legally binding? According to the common law system, exercised in Hong Kong, the preamble is part of the law to help the court and the public understand the background of the bill or ordinance. Since no penalties are proposed or provided, so therefore it's not legally binding. Well, secondly, could the Secretary tell us, I think, is this more than just not tampering with the national law? Through this national anthem bill, you want to achieve, more purposes than this. Well, some people are saying that the bill is forcing people to be patriotic. If you were to force somebody to be patriotic, that is, someone who is not patriotic will be punished. But the bill itself will spell out when there will be punishment. That is, if you will only when you publicly insult the national anthem. So only when you engage in an act of insulting the national law anthem, and if you have the intent, then only then will you be punished. So there's no question of forcing anyone to be patriotic. The national anthem bill aims at leading people or guiding people to respect the law. In the preamble, the intention here, I think among the various intention is actually to promote patriotism, but we're not forcing people to be patriotic. The penalty doesn't say does not depend on whether or not you are patriotic, but rather whether you've been involved in an act that is insulting to the national anthem. So it will only provide the background and explain the intent of the national anthem bill. Mr. Riley, thank you. The DAB supports the early enactment of the national anthem bill, and I'm sure the general public would agree that we need to implement the national anthem law as soon as possible. The Secretary kept saying that the government is, enacting a local legislation to, help people respect the national anthem, and that anybody who deliberately insults the national law will be punished. I think Mr. Dennis Kwok and some of the members asked the Secretary whether he has consulted LegCo. I think he is making things difficult for the Secretary. We are already going through this solemn legislative process. We set up a Bills Committee and so on. So the entire content of the bill is now being discussed by LegCo now, and we are now being consulted. As to why we were not consulted before, and I think the Secretary was simply too embarrassed to answer the question, because sometimes when he asks questions concerning one country, it's very difficult to ask those questions because LegCo is so polarized. If the national anthem bill became law, it will only apply to members who will take the oath for the next session of LegCo. And it's not just something which affects the 70 members of this council. When LegCo members take the oath, and whether or not on that occasion the national anthem should be played, I think the public in general will agree that this is a reasonable arrangement, except that we didn't have this arrangement in the past, and we didn't think about it. Even if the administration were needed to conduct a consultation, they should consult the public at large. But even if asked the members of this time they're saying that you did not consult them. but actually on many occasions you've already asked us questions relating to the bill on many occasions informally. You asked whether or not when the bill anthem was being played we can't go to the washroom and so on, and as LegCo members, if we don't respect this principle one country two system, we don't respect the basic law, that we shouldn't we shouldn't stand for election or become LegCo members. I think it is the duty that you should have carried out a long time ago, except that you haven't done this before and you are now doing it, rectifying the situation. So my question for the Secretary, I don't think you should feel so aggrieved. Sometimes it's very difficult really to consult. Thank you, Ms. Lee. When we were working on the bill, we at the CA panel, we did explain the framework, and we also conducted a public hearing to listen to the public before we drafted the bill. Of course, we did not have a discussion regarding all the details of the bill with members, but we've conducted a consultation and then we proceeded to draft the bill. As I said, regarding the taking of vote by LegCo members and on that occasion the national anthem must be played, there is this requirement in the national anthem law, and we think that it's a very reasonable requirement, and therefore in the bill we've included this. The judiciary, I think we do have a mechanism to follow in dealing with the judiciary and other departments. Well, the contents of the bill are now being scrutinized by the Bills Committee in this Council, and earlier I had informally communicated with members of this Council and to sought the views of members on this bill, and I'll be happy to listen to members' views regarding the proposal that the national anthem should be played when members of this council take their oath. I think that's the end of the time for questioning by members. Let me now consult with members whether or not we need to organize a public hearing. I've just become the chairman of the Bills Committee, so I will talk to the clerk and our legal advisor and arrange for a date and then inform members accordingly. And the necessary the relevant arrangements will be announced on the website of LegCo. We'll also be extending invitation to the 18 district councils. As for the date of our next meeting, it will be the 1st of March from 8:30 to 10:30. All right, if there's no other business, I now declare that the meeting is adjourned.